Syria's second-largest city of Aleppo has been seized by rebels for the first time since the country's conflict began more than a decade ago. The surprise advance by rebels has put the Assad government on the back foot. Iran and its proxies have accused the US and Israel for the fall of the second-largest Syrian city. Our next report tells you what led to the fall of Aleppo and the possible repercussions of the resurgence of violence in Syria.
In a fierce offensive over 72 hours, Syria's Aleppo city has fallen to the rebels. President Bashar al-Assad's government has lost control of Syria's once thriving commercial hub. For the first time in years, toppling the statue of Bashar al-Assad's brother in government-led area, seizing the Aleppo airport, and dozens of nearby towns. The rebels have overrun Syria's second-largest city with little or no resistance. Aleppo, roughly 350 kilometers north of capital Damascus, has been a critical battleground in the Syrian civil war. The rebels want to reclaim the territory and cut off critical supply routes for government forces. Their progress has been rapid as they capture villages, strategic highway interchanges, and military base in the Aleppo province. Besides loosening Assad's grip on Syria, the insurgent attack threatens to destabilize West Asia further. The timing of the rebel offensive comes at a time when Iran and its proxies, including Hamas and Hezbollah, are locked in conflicts elsewhere. The lightning advance by rebels has put Syria's key allies, Russia, Iran, and Hezbollah, under pressure. Israel's military campaign has hugely dented the Hezbollah rank and file, besides depleting their resources, while Russia's focus on its war in Ukraine has limited its reinforcement to Syria. On the other hand, Turkey, a key player in the region, is known to back some of the rebel factions in the offensive, adding to the volatile mix of overlapping conflicts, while the intense fighting has left thousands displaced. It has also opened the doors to those forced to flee their homes in the wake of the civil war. In a mark of protest, they waved rebel flags in Aleppo's landmark citadel.
The citadel of Aleppo has seen many oppressors. All of them are gone, but the citadel of Aleppo remains. Bashar al-Assad is gone. The free people have taken over, and soon they'll reach Umayyad Square in Damascus.
The surprise attack adds a fresh layer of complexity and uncertainty to a region reeling from multiple wars. The resurgence of violence is expanding the humanitarian crisis, besides triggering another wave of mass displacement. As the fate of Syria hangs in the balance, Iran has voiced its support for the Assad government, signaling a potential retaliation against the rebels. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Chris Doyle is the Director of Council for Arab-British Understanding. Mr. Doyle is now joining us live from London. Welcome and thank you very much for making time for us. Let's start with everyone's concern. What would happen if this latest rebel incursion into Aleppo is not controlled or dealt with in time?
We are facing an acute level of uncertainty. I think that there are question marks now about the Syrian regime's ability to handle the rebels without the support of Russia. Does that drag in Russia? Is Russia capable, given its commitments within Ukraine, of doing this? And I think what we will also fear, and many Syrians in Aleppo who are now under the control of these rebels, some of whom are very Islamist and extreme, from Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, used to be linked to al-Qaeda. They are concerned not only about them, but also the manner in which the Syrian regime might wish to fight those rebels by bombing Aleppo, because of course this is what happened in the past, where civilians get caught up between a Syrian regime that has shown absolutely no concern for their welfare and rebels who are a hodgepodge of different types and elements, often competing, but above all, and I think this is really important, are often acting not in the interests of Syrians, but external powers and regional power games over which they have no influence, over which they have no control.
Mr. Doyle, for the longest time, wars in Europe, Israel and even Lebanon have really clouded what has been happening in Syria, even though there was a lull in the civil war there. But what is the message here, or rather the warning, and why now?
This is the danger of allowing unresolved conflicts to just lie there in a semi-paralyzed form, because the front lines in this conflict, Syria was roughly divided into 3 differing areas of governance. The front lines had almost frozen for a number of years now. There hadn't been much movement until this latest rebel offensive. And the international community had basically lost interest in Syria. Most European states didn't have a Syrian policy, the United States didn't have one, and they were hopeful, crossing their fingers perhaps, that somehow it could be just managed. But of course the tensions, the conflicts that underpinned all those horrific years of war and civil strife in Syria still very much remained. And these front lines were never going to stay like this. So it's happened now. People are speculating as to the reasons why. There's a Turkish agenda. They wish to see, of course, Kurdish groups that make up, for example, the majority of the Syrian defense forces very much weakened. President Erdogan also had tried to mend fences with President Assad of Syria, but that didn't happen. So you can see Turkey trying to put itself in a stronger position in terms of Syria. But also, I think for these rebels, there is the sense that Hezbollah has obviously been under the cosh given the Israeli invasion of Lebanon. They've been very much degraded militarily. So this time, Hezbollah, that was really at the center of the Syrian regime's most capable fighting forces, won't be there. Iran also is considerably weaker as a result of recent events. So I think there's an opportunistic element to what is going on.
Mr. Doyle, finally, the army announced a temporary withdrawal. The military also said dozens of soldiers were killed in attacks in the northwest, and it was now regrouping to launch a counterattack. If that counterattack happens, it's a new ball game. What can be done now to avoid this from escalating?
It will need to have agreement and negotiations between those external powers who are so influential in events within Syria, and that includes Turkey and Russia in particular, but not only them. They're going to have to reach some form of agreement. Turkey has significant influence over those rebel powers, and of course Russia is a major patron and backer of the Assad regime. This is the only way this ends without further carnage. But that said, it's going to take quite some effort, given the status of Aleppo. It's the second largest city in Syria and very key for these rebels to leave Aleppo. I struggle to see the political pressure that will bring that about. So we could land up in another spate of extremely violent fighting and bombing, as I said, where civilians get even targeted in this as part of a really awful series of atrocities. It's the last thing Syria needs. It's the last thing the region needs.
All right, we'll have to end it there. I've been talking to Mr. Chris Doyle, who's the Director of Council for Arab-British Understanding. Mr. Doyle, thank you very much for your time and for talking to us today.
Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.